All right, it's good to see everybody at the Handmade Network Expo, the first one. That's pretty awesome. Thank you to our awesome hosts. I got to give them a round of applause. Okay. So my name is DaCamara. That's a DaCamara for those who are curious about the pronunciation. I also go by Starfreak Clone on the Discord, or you can call me Fred, because some people have also called me Fred before. So what I want to talk about today is my editor that I've been working on since 2023. I'm not going to talk about everything that I've covered in the past, and I'll cover that stuff a little bit later, like how you can get access to that material. But what I do want to cover is some new and exciting stuff that I've been working on in the editor. And it's exclusive to this expo. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm a compiler developer by day. I'm a Fred dev by night, some nights. And I'm a very tired new father. So it's been taking a little bit extra time to do that stuff. So Fred work is here and there. It's a little spotty nowadays, but it's worth it. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about Fred. Fred it kind of stands for friendly editor. That's the moniker for it. And there's kind of like these 4 pillars that I wanted to talk about today. One of which is native. So Fred, I've been shipping since 2023. It has both Windows and Linux binaries native. So the entire platform layer is written by me, so I'm not relying on any libraries or anything like that, which is why it takes a little bit of time to kind of like develop some of the internal systems in Fred. But I want to keep it that way so I have full control over the software stack. It's fast because I have all of that direct control. I can very clearly define how events are pumped through the system, how startup times work, how threads work, everything end to end. And because of that, I can make the experience like really fast. It's customizable. So this is kind of a thing that I started with very early on, which is like data driving all of the configuration behind Fred. So any of the colors, any of the configuration, like do you want to render white space? Do you want to have line numbers? All that stuff is completely data driven. So, and I'm pushing that forward even further today. It's extensible. So at the beginning of this year, I announced the plugin system for Fred. And it's a really interesting system, and it works off of this project called TCC, which is a small C compiler. This thing is actually embedded in Fred, so the editor itself ships with a C compiler that's capable of generating code, and we'll talk about how that actually works in the editor. And it's handmade, of course. There's no AI stuff inside of Fred at all. None of the code is generated by AI, nor will it ever be as long as I'm involved with the project. Okay, so let's talk about that previous material I was mentioning at the beginning. I'm going to present these links in order of decreasing usefulness. What does that mean? So here is a QR code to the very first talk if you care to take a snapshot of that, or you can see me after and I can give that to you. Here's the URL. Here's the Google search for that. So yeah, come see me after class, and you can copy paste that if you want. And here's a GitHub Copilot chat on can you give me that link? And I was like, it gave me a link, which is nice. So I clicked that link and you come to a Bing page. All right. So I think what it really wanted to do was put that in the URL. So I went ahead and did that, and it's not even my video. All right. Thank you, AI. Okay, so here's the Fred plugins. So that first one was about Fred and the motivation behind Fred. This one is specifically talking about the plugin system, why I chose TCC, and how to actually develop plugins. Here's the URL. I'm not going to do the Google search, but I did do the AI search, and it just didn't even find it. All right. OK, that's fine. So what's different today? So again, we're going to revisit the pillars that I talked about earlier. So it's fast, it's customizable, it's extensible, and let's go into the demo. So The first thing you'll notice when you boot up Fred is it's pretty fast. So like that's pretty instantaneous in terms of like startup time. And I'm running on kind of like a pretty old piece of hardware. Like this is a 2021 laptop that I just randomly got, and it's not super powerful. And you can kind of tell that, like, let's compare it to Notepad, for example. So that's sad. Yeah, and you compare it to Fred. There you go. So here's kind of like the introduction to Fred. And the very first thing that it wants you to try and do is hit F1 for help. This is kind of like your home base when you first start out editing files with Fred. So when you open this up, you'll come across this command palette. Let's make it bigger. And from here, you can kind of like fuzzy search for anything you want. So like if we want to open the config, for example, we can do that. If we want to open the file explorer, like we can just do that, right? So the thing I wanted to talk about now is like how do you sort of like customize Fred to your liking? So it's like the next pillar. So we talked about how it's fast. We want to talk about how you can do customization. So you can do things like line numbers, you can do syntax highlighting, all of this fun stuff. But let's actually open a file and sort of see how it interacts with the rest of the system. So if I go in here into, oops, let me go demo stuff, right? Get projects, Fred. Okay, so there's this functionality in the file explorer called anchoring, which is essentially all it does is it takes the current directory that you're at, flattens all the files, and makes them capable of fuzzy searching. So we can hit that. We can either hit this UI button here, or we can hit a key chord to actually do that. And once you do this, it also enables the find all widget. So find all, it does exactly what it says on the tin. So if I look for like hash include, right, like it finds all of the hash includes pretty much instantly. The first time you do it, it's like hitting a cold file system, so it might be a little bit slower, but every time after that, it's pretty much instantaneous, like about 300 milliseconds, right? It's not too bad for searching. It found results in 937 files, but there's way more than 937 files in here because there's all kinds of Git stuff and junk like that. But let's look at main, for example, CBP. And this paneling system allows you to sort of like take anything you want and dock it just like that. So if you want to move tabs around, you can totally do that. So let's talk a little bit about the customization system first. So I talked about how you can show line numbers, right? So we can toggle those on and off. There's also a new feature I added, which is relative line numbers. This was a highly requested feature, and actually I'm kind of converted to it now. It's actually insanely useful once you start using it effectively. So you can have these like relative line numbers that go just like that. The other thing I wanted to show was like colors. So right, you can change like the background color. You can change it to whatever you want. It's kind of like a flashbang, sorry about that. But new in this version, and this is the first thing I wanted to announce with Fred, is we now have themes. So you can hit this drop down, and right now I have 4 built-in themes. So there's Fred, there's Solarize Light, Dark, and of course, 4Coder, which was a huge inspiration to Fred in general. So you can switch between these at any time. And of course, once you switch to the theme, you can then fork all the colors and make them your own or do whatever you want with them. And I'm planning on adding a whole bunch more themes on top of these ones. So this is kind of like a new customization feature that's just with this version of Fred. So another piece of Fred that I mentioned at the very beginning, which was like some of the motivation and the interesting tech behind Fred, is its undo tree. And this kind of like leans into the fast category again. So if I talk about stuff like this, so hello, let's make this text bigger. So hello world, and then let's do this. My name is Fred, right? If you undo that and you want to make it a different name, like my name is Cameron, right? So traditional undo goes like undo, right? And you can keep undoing, and then you can redo, right? But now I can't get back to like Fred. Like, where did that go? How do you fix this? So in Fred, it's built on top of this immutable buffer concept. And because of that, you can basically keep a snapshot to any edit point that you've ever had in your edit session. So if I wanted to get back in Fred, I could hit Control-Shift-Z, and it brings up this kind of like interesting piece of UI, which is kind of graphy. So as you're navigating this thing, like, what's the most intuitive way to view, like, from this node to a different node, like, how would you actually visualize that? So my thought process was, oh, like diff, like get diff is kind of a thing that makes sense. So as you're navigating this tree here, you can see that you can also scroll through the diffs that are happening here. So at the very beginning, when I opened this buffer, it was nothing, so it looked like this, right? And you can hit Control-R to get back to where you were. And so now I can get back to Fred. So you have the capability of kind of preserving both of these points in time. So that's kind of like one of the bigger features of Fred. The other big feature, which kind of falls in the extensibility category, is the plugin system. So if I go to plugins.c, so this is just a regular C file that ends up getting compiled, and it has a executable code page created for it in Fred, or in the address space of the executable that Fred is running in. So if I wanted to, I ship a number of plugins by default, but if you want to see an example of a plugin running, so a good way to see that is to come in here. And this is just a plugin that I use actually all of the time. So here we have like a whole list of stuff, right? Like, let's imagine for a second here. And by the way, multi-cursor support is extremely important to me, and it's a first-class citizen thing in Fred. So if you want to interact with multi-cursors, it works all across the system, including the plugin system. So if I want to navigate to, say, the end of this thing and like delete these, how do I align all of that stuff, right? Like, I want to get back to where those things were all aligned. Well, somebody on our Discord made a very nice plugin called Align Multi-Cursors with Spaces. Boom, just like that. And the code, powering that is just a tiny little C program that's executing inside of Fred. So here's all the code that just ran in order to make that happen. And you can basically be a text editor author in this way. So let's actually go ahead and make our own little plugin really quickly here. So this is another plugin I added, which is uncomment, or toggle C-style comment. Anything, by the way, that's blue inside of this command palette, that means it's a custom plugin. So it gives you the little trash can in case you want to delete it or whatever. So we can uncomment it just like that. So if I save this, and now I go to recompile and bind plugins, just like that, we have access to this plugin. So if I wanted to use it, for example, I can do something like, or I have to first bind it. And the way you bind it is you take the function name that's inside of this thing, copy that, and we go down to the entry we just created. We didn't create the entry because I canceled it. Obviously, the UI is a work in progress, so bear with it. So here's our function. So if I Control-V that in, that's fine. Now we can try and insert our thing. So it's just going to insert this banner here. Boom, just like that. We created a tiny little C plugin that throws the buffer out. So the other thing I was thinking of is, like, since I have a C compiler, what else can you do with a C compiler? And what problems does Fred have Oh, by the way, the other thing I added was sessions. So if I close the editor and I open it back up, it opens up immediately where you were. So it's extremely fast. Like the serialization is basically instantaneous. And it comes with your full undo graph. So every edit you have ever made, saved in a session. Anyway, so what else can we do with a C compiler? Well, we have this sort of syntax highlighting that is driven by tree sitter, actually. And I really appreciate tree sitter because it has this capability of having a grammar for just about everything. And that's so incredibly useful. But there's the yet less useful piece of it, which is that you have to compile these dang things all the time. You have to either have a DLL, which provides your tree sitter, or if it doesn't, you have to have a different DLL. And like usually editors have ways of referencing like custom languages and stuff like that. It's a whole mess. So how can we take the C compiler that we have and maybe make it work with tree sitter? Because tree sitter is just C. It's just a C parser. So here we have this interesting definition of a Rust thing, right? And I'll actually go to the File Explorer and show you what I have inside of my Git project. So I actually just downloaded, or I cloned the repo for the tree sitter Rust. And tree sitter Rust provides you like the parser and the scanner and then the highlights necessary to make highlights happen. And you can see in Fred, like these are the languages that are currently supported, right? There's text, C++, Bash. Those are built into Fred. I compile these and ship them with Fred. But there's no Rust parser, not yet at least. So if I copy this and I go to my config and let's just paste this at the end here, and I save this, now let's open up a Rust file just to show you what's going on here. So there's no highlighting yet for Rust. But if I go ahead and reload the config, and now I have this option for Rust. I turn that on, and now we have highlights for Rust, and we didn't have to compile anything outside of the editor. It comes with everything that you need to compile that language, highlight it, and give you whatever you need for any language that tree sitter supports. So, and of course, when we open up another .rs, since we created this extensions, you can associate it to whatever extension you want. And actually, the system prefers using the custom ones, so you can actually override the default extensions that come with Fred. So if you want to point, the C++, if you wanted to use like a completely different parser for instead of the built-in C++ one for C++, you can totally do that. That's totally fine. But yeah, now it'll just totally work. And every time we close it and we reopen it, it gives you the highlights. So it's completely persistent. So those are some of the bigger features that we've silently been working on. And one last thing I wanted to show. So if we go back to our demo page here. Right. So we showed how Fred is fast. We show how it's customizable. We have themes now. It's fast because it's convenient and fast because it has this new session system that it loads basically instantaneously. And it's extensible in that now you can have highlights for any language that tree sitter supports, which is a lot. And also through the plugin system. But there's one thing I kind of like intentionally left out, which is that it's native. And I talked about this at the beginning, where we have Windows and we have Linux, but now we have Mac. This is Fred running natively on Mac OS. And it supports everything that the other two platforms have. And it's handmade. No AI generation, of course. So a huge thank you to a couple of people. Brett Toomey actually helped me tremendously with getting this Mac port online. He essentially, we worked together to write the entire platform layer. My wife, because without her, obviously I wouldn't even be here. My friends who kept encouraging me to keep going on Fred despite all of the insurmountable odds. That's all I got for you. Questions?
Test, test.
All right. This is super cool. I think with the first question I have with a renderer or with an editor is the rendering layer. And obviously when you go to like multi-platform, that's an interesting decision. So what is your rendering layer and how do you make it multi-platform?
So the rendering layers, there are layers, and they're kind of like per platform. So right now, Fred has 2 renderers for Windows. It has a D3, D11 renderer, and it has a OpenGL renderer. The OpenGL renderer is the one I started out with. On Linux, you just have OpenGL, and then on macOS, you have Metal. So it's basically like, I didn't want to fiddle around with like trying to make OpenGL work on macOS, and I didn't want to fiddle around with like limping like OpenGL forward on Windows, so I went ahead and just did the native thing on all of those platforms. Now, the other piece of that, which is like font rendering. So font rendering is all done through FreeType, and that's an intentional decision because I wanted fonts to look consistent across all of the platforms. So while the rendering layers themselves are native to the platform, the actual experience of using the editor should feel consistent on all of them.
All right, the next question.
Awesome editor. I'm very curious about your Linux backend. Are you targeting X11 or are you going with the new Wayland stuff?
It's X11 for now because that's like the widest compatibility layer, and obviously like you can go through. Wayland has like the X11 kind of forwarding behavior, but I would like to make a Wayland direct port eventually.
I was just curious, how does it run under X Wayland?
I've heard mixed results. So things like how events are pumped are sometimes not quite the same as if you had native Xorg. I think there was one issue they saw where there was a layering problem where it didn't fire off. Like if you have a window that's on top of Fred and you move it around, it will kind of like erase the buffer behind it. And that's like only on Wayland for some reason, but on regular Xorg it totally works. So there's like weird inconsistent behavior like that would be nice to fix.
All right, for our next question.
I didn't quite catch what was the granularity level of the edit tree, and can you merge different branches?
So the question was like, what is the granularity? The granularity is essentially kind of chunky. It wants to act as chunky as possible. So for example, if I type a whole bunch of stuff at once, and actually we can kind of go through that. If you type a whole bunch of stuff at once, right, those are just inserts. If you hit Control-Z, like it kind of makes sense to undo all of that. But if you do a bunch of inserts and then you do like a delete like this, then if you do undo, it'll undo that and then undo that. So when you look at the undo tree, it kind of looks like this, right? So it tries to interact in a way that if you change the editor command you're issuing, it will try to make that a new snapshot, like a new checkpoint. And then the second question was, can you merge branches? No, not right now, but I've always wanted that.
All right, this will be our last question, but please go to his demo table after if you have more.
I think it's super cool that you didn't have to. Is it here? Okay. I think it's super cool that you didn't have to close the editor to make all those changes. And for your plugin system, that seems like one problem of doing sort of the hot code reloading. How was trying to hot load tree setter?
Painful. So I actually had to modify TCC to do that. And it's like a very non-intuitive way. Because for example, you don't want to ship an entire standard library if somebody has like hash include.io. You want to provide enough of a minimal set of that standard library to make the vast majority of the parser generators work. And because when the parsers are generated, they don't tend to use like a lot of the C library stuff anyway. It's usually just like types and some built-in functions like like memmove or like memcopy, all that kind of stuff. So if I provide the support that's generally across all the parsers, you kind of hit all the bases.
All right, that wraps up the presentations.